I recognized that humor and positivity showed up to make my life and save my life. And I knew that when my life was threatened, that it would help me in that instance as well. Folks that have a reasonable amount of humor in their life, which is marked by shared laughter with other people multiple times a day, people with that in their life are incredibly less likely to get ill, incredibly less likely to die from illness, incredibly less likely to have heart disease and other stress oriented diseases. I don't get to know everything about why me, why anybody, why does it even
Yeah.
exist? I don't guess I'm going to get qualified to have all those answers. Yet in this idea of other amazing benefits of a cancer diagnosis, it most definitely grew me in a number of ways.
Hi, and welcome to the Bouncing Back Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa McCurley, and after my own battle with autoimmune disease, I created this podcast to share strategies, tools, and inspiring stories for other professionals navigating life and business with chronic illness. If you haven't yet joined our Facebook community, please check out Bouncing Back Podcast, where we continue this conversation. I am incredibly excited to introduce to you our guest today, Les McGehee. He is a speaker, author, coach, thought leader, and serial entrepreneur. His journey started with professional improv and comedic acting that evolved into business training with clients from NASA to HBO, Disney to Keller Williams, and so many more. He co-created the training certification program for Gary Keller's best-selling book, The One Thing. Les is also certified in positive psychology from UPenn, and he's a cancer survivor. He's incorporated these lessons in grit, positive mindset, and strategy in his current career endeavor, Rialto Academy, an online education campus that trains over 500,000 real estate professionals. Les, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for that kind and generous introduction.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. There's a lot to share, and we're actually going to break this episode into two parts because we've got a lot to dig into. Les has a lot of life experience, and then giving forth of that to other people. Let's just get right in. Let's start with, could you share with us about your cancer diagnosis that led into your cancer journey, where you were in life, how that showed up, and what that journey was like?
Sure. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I have enjoyed a lot of health in my life, a lot of very robust health, nice, strong body, very few illnesses, both in frequency and severity. A few things over the years, some minor challenges, yet nothing major. And living what I would self describe as a charmed life. It was just wonderful that I was identified as somebody who was funny and needed to go be in front of audiences, and I enjoyed it and got to do thousands and thousands of those, and then got to evangelize that message of plays well with others and how to have more positive humor in your life and positive interactions in your life and everything. That was all like really wonderful. So that's the mindset I was in and what I was doing when the small thing came up, when the small thing came up of, gosh, I guess that blood level is a little bit high. Why don't we send you to a specialist to have that checked out? And when I got to the specialist, said, "Oh, this is a no-brainer. We're about to diagnose you with cancer. Let's go ahead and schedule a biopsy," and all of that stuff. I literally visited that urologist that diagnosed me. I literally visited them on my way to a 2-day comedy presentation in Dallas
Wow.
and sharing a message of positivity. And while I guess it's possible to say that for many people that would be challenging, for me, having led my life that way of working with humor and positivity, I just automatically leaned in further. I recognized that humor and positivity showed up to make my life and save my life. And I knew that when my life was threatened, that it would help me in that instance as well. About 3 hours after I got my diagnosis, I was doing comedy in front of an audience that was responding really well. And in the back of my mind, I was watching it all happen and seeing myself in place and time. But that's how I got my diagnosis, and they verified it with a biopsy. And then I went through amazing and horrible things for 3 or 4 months, as I'm sure everyone who has been in a similar situation can relate to. The amazing things that happened right away was I was diagnosed. It was verified. My biopsy results came back. That was 2 days before Christmas 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I had my children about to arrive and was trying to figure out, was I supposed to tell them? Was I supposed to tell them right away? How would I tell them? And there are a couple of people that I believe we know in common. I'm going to name one of them because he's such a special friend to me now, and that would be Lance and Josh. These two folks ended up having a very large impact in my life. Both of them found out what was going on with me because of their interest in my career and my life and our friendship. And I hadn't really wanted to tell anybody yet. I'll use Lance as an example. Lance said, "I'm going to send my father-in-law to you." And I said, "I really don't need to meet a lot of people right now. I have a full plate and a full agenda." And
I've
he
got a
said,
lot, thanks.
he did it anyway. And I spoke to this man. His name is John. And John would be not Lance's father in law, but Lance's sister's father in law. John barked orders at me military style for about 30 minutes and was like an angel that showed up in terms of early information and what to do. And it culminated in things like, "Have you spoken to anybody at MD Anderson yet?" And I said, "I'm very aware of MD Anderson. They brought me in to speak to them before and things like that. And some of the other great hospital operations, but certainly MD Anderson." But I said, "No, it's 2 days before Christmas. I have not spoken to a doctor at MD Anderson." And his response was, "I imagine I can get you a call before 5 o'clock today. Would that help?" And I
Wow.
said, "Sure." And it turns out John's a powerful man with a lot of influence. He's also a prostate cancer survivor. He's thriving after decades after prostate cancer. And he was very well connected at the hospital. And I had a doctor call me from an airport at 5:30 that same day. And I had a lot of people offer to help me. Almost none of that help came to fruition other than the massive support that I felt, because I went into about 3 or 4 weeks of the worst part of my diagnosis,
Mm.
which was finding advice and insurance and who my caregivers were going to be and all of that. That was about 5 weeks or 6 weeks of maybe 18-hour days. And then another great business ally of mine and great individual named Josh said, "I have someone I need you to meet." And again, I said, "I got my hands full at the moment. Maybe I'll meet them in a couple of months or something like that." He says, "No, I think you need to meet them." And he introduced me to Susie. Susie ended up being one of the most important people I will ever have met in my life. Susie was out front of a congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C., about to walk in to persuade them in her profession to have prostate screenings come earlier in life mandatory. And she'd been at it long enough that she was attempting to get the age reduced from 50 to 45 for a prostate screening. And she had figured out a way to do it through the VA hospitals. I heard the voices of angels again there because I had helped VA hospitals for decades. It's one of my favorite things to do is to help. I've done 2 tours overseas to entertain and speak to the veterans. And I've also helped a couple of dozen veterans hospitals and the nurse management. I did the Leadership Development Institute at the VA. So I felt kindred and I felt a little unsurprised. And anyway, Susie was like, "John," Susie says, "here's what you'll be doing. Here are all the assets that you need. I got to pop in and speak to Congress real quick. I'll call you right back afterwards." And so that's how it went. I would say it was a festival of confusion, trauma, surprise angels, unsurprising angels. And most definitely in my journey, the most difficult portion was the first 8 weeks.
The first day, just like physically, or physically and psychologically?
Physically and psychologically. I'm not a person that has to know all the answers, yet I do need to know what I intend to do next.
Yeah.
I do have that self awareness, and it was very difficult to find out what to do next for those first few weeks. And
Yeah.
one of the things that's, I say funny, I'm going to use that word right now, Melissa. One of the things funny about that is people would say, "Oh, your type of cancer." In that interval, they'd say, "Your type of cancer." It's not like you have to rush. It doesn't grow that quickly. You got a few months, you can figure it out, or something like that. I'm like,
That feels like a
that
pretty quick
doesn't
timeline to me. I don't know. A couple months.
cancer in me, want cancer out of me.
Yeah.
Tomorrow would suit me. So yeah, we did tell some people, yeah, we'd rather have the earlier appointment. Yeah, let me know if an earlier appointment comes up. And we insurance is interesting enough for someone in my situation. And
In the
we didn't
stuff of
know.
healthcare.
Yeah, it was a lot of fortune. I had a lot of good fortune and a lot of support from some amazing individuals that I'll be grateful to for the rest of my life that really showed their character. For your audience that's listening to this, Melissa, you think about those people you know that are high character and are in your life because they're true friends and high
Mm.
character. Oh, it is difficult to quantify how amazing high character individuals can be in a pressured moment. And I'm very fortunate. I feel very fortunate about that. Yeah, that's how that happened. And then there was pain, and then there was an awful lot of radioactive stuff and scans. And I used everything in the toolkit. And I was planning on. I know in our other conversation we're going to have, at the time, since I'm an avid learner, I was actually planning on going into a graduate program and had just gotten things together to begin a graduate program. And in that 8 weeks of trouble, there was one thing very prominent in my mind, which was retreat or advance. It was a big deal to me. And I was like, wow, I bet a lot of people retreat or temporarily retreat in a situation like this for very good reason. Yet I
Right.
think my only way through is to advance. So I doubled down on my learning. I discovered that what I had intended to learn was going to not only help me through my situation, yet it was going to help a great many other people by giving me tools that I could share. And so that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of what my first couple of months were like. And my second anniversary of that diagnosis was about 10 days ago.
Ah, congratulations.
Thank you.
That
I'm
meant
healthy with clean blood tests right now.
yay. Let me
Thank
ask you, did you, because I'll just be honest, this was a challenge for me, being such a intrinsically motivated person, which you clearly are, a lifetime longer, a can do attitude person. Did you struggle at all with asking for help?
Absolutely. I was very uncomfortable asking for help. And at one point, somebody advised me, they said, you could go with someone like Cancer Zero. Cancer Zero has a lot of programs, and you probably feel differently about accepting help from a funded charitable program like that, funded by cancer survivors, compared to non survivors,
Yeah.
compared to asking people for help. And that is true. Yet I didn't like that either. Yeah, asking
Yeah.
for help was not very easy for me. Closest relationships, I'm fortunate to have a wonderful spouse, my wife, Kim. And my closest relationship, I guess I asked her for every little bit of help in the world. And she went through every little thing with me and the appointments. And we wrote everything down in a journal every step of the way to be as smart as we could about everything. Yeah, you're right. It's very difficult to ask for
Yeah.
help and not much time to adjust for the need to the need to ask for help.
Sometimes I think, I know for me, I think it was just I was forced into it. Just I remember I have one
Yeah.
moment, a memory of I'm 52, so the idea of having to have somebody drive me somewhere is humbling, and I still actually need that because vertigo is one of my recurring symptoms. But I remember a moment where I'm in my mom's car. I needed to get to the chiropractor for an adjustment because I was having vertigo stuff, and throwing up into a CVS bag in the passenger side of my mom's car, feeling simultaneous like gratitude to my mother and total humiliation of, oh, this is my life now. I used to be like a 7-figure business producer and this, and it was humbling. It was humbling, but I also, there's a lot of grace in that moment. That's one of those things that shifted me having to learn to accept help and then ultimately ask for it as well.
Yeah, Melissa, I think that's a beautiful and accurate description. And I think it is humbling and full of grace. A couple of my closest friends, including a couple of my author friends. So I'm always writing, and I was working on a second edition of a book at the time. And one of my friends, who's a really prominent writer and producer, one of my friends said, "You'll have a chapter in this new book, and here's the title." And we don't normally talk to each other that way. Yet he said, "This is what the title will be." And he had spoken about it with a couple of my other friends. This is Owen, my dear friend Owen. He says, "I believe the name of that chapter is going to be And Other Amazing Benefits from a Cancer Diagnosis."
Yeah.
And what he's addressing was that thing you're saying about the incredible humility, highlighting of your value system, highlighting of who matters most around you, and the empowerment and the freeing empowerment and incredibly devastating humility of asking for help and needing help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree, Melissa. And I think that was all good for me. I'm the dad of seven. We got five of our own young adults and seven total that we care for and look
Oh,
after. I also love to mentor several hundred people in comedy and in business. I love to mentor these associations and individuals in business that think have these very important and powerful entrepreneurial missions. And so I help a lot of people, and I had to accept help at a grand scale. And yeah, I empathize with that, Melissa. The idea of puking and feeling grateful and embarrassed all simultaneously, I identify.
in your mom's car. She's in her 70s. You're headed to the chiropractor. Yeah, I count that as one of the gifts
It's
that
a horrible
I think,
blessing, isn't it?
yeah, it was a horrible blessing. I like that term. I haven't heard that one, but yes, a horrible blessing, because that's how I
And
to
thank
take it
you.
from.
It was a horrible
Yeah,
blessing. Yeah,
a
thank you.
horrible.
And I found myself saying things, Melissa. Do I look like somebody who wasn't paying attention and wasn't grateful? Do I look like somebody who needs to be hit over the head with a message in this manner? And I think
Apparently,
the
yeah.
answer might be yes.
I would have thought the answer was no. I did a lot of work on myself, but clearly the answer was yes. Or I like that this resonates with me, the idea that God doesn't give us things we can't handle, and that maybe this just strokes my ego, but maybe I can handle more than I thought, and maybe that's why that was given. Maybe it's some combination of the two. You needed to be humbled, and you can handle a lot.
I believe all of that. I definitely believe that. And I also believe that I don't get to know. And that's
Yeah,
also humbling. I don't get to know everything about why me, why anybody, why does it even
yeah,
exist? I don't guess I'm going to get qualified to have all those answers. Yet, yet in this idea of other amazing benefits of a cancer diagnosis, it most definitely grew me in a number of ways. And I have to stop short. And I wrote this in the introductory paragraph to that draft chapter. I have to stop short of recommending this to anybody or being totally
yeah,
grateful about it. Yet
yeah,
the outcomes do ignite gratitude. Choking me up just a little bit talking about it, Melissa.
yeah.
It's horrible, amazing, and immense, and larger than us, larger than me.
Yeah, for sure. You touched on at the beginning humor. You said humor was a tool in your toolkit, and it was the first and strongest one that came out for you and how to approach this journey of cancer. Could you share? Humor is not everybody's big tool in their toolkit. Could you share
Right.
just maybe even a couple of examples of what that means to you, how that shows up, and then how you used it? I think that's very interesting.
I appreciate you saying it that way. Yeah, in my life, I have this good fortune. I got to comedy and I got to create comedy. And I did everything to do with comedy. I know a lot of people will right away picture a stand up on a stage with a microphone. And most certainly I did hundreds of those. Yeah, I did hundreds of every type of paid. I'm a guy who had children that needed
Yeah,
braces and shoes and things like that. So I did all those jobs. Television, no television, film, no film, theaters. Luckily, I didn't have to do a lot of the slog that a lot of entertainers do, right? Yet, I was a kid, and when I was sent to my second grade class in a new school, my brother, who I think is funnier than me, one of my brothers, and my older sister, who I think is also funnier than me, neither of whom works professionally, and they wouldn't be able to do. I'm the one that was able to be funny professionally. Yet they put me up to a prank. I did the prank when I arrived at school, immediately got in trouble, and they put me in a talent show to work out my humor energy, my humorous energies.
Oh,
And when I
that
got
was
to, and
foresight. That was okay.
I look back at that as leadership. I really do. I
Yeah, for
realized they
sure.
were coping with a problem. I realized I was a problem. I made poor Miss Butterfield cry and run mascara all down her face on the first day of
Oh,
school. So I realized I was a problem. Yet their solution had leadership to it. And that
yes.
showed up throughout my school career. Where flash forward to high school, I was a little bored in a country high school and I caused trouble and weird trouble. Nothing. I wasn't a thief or a violent person or anything, but practical jokes. Put some dirty pictures on the world history teacher's map and broke the ratchet. So when he pulled it down, it wouldn't go back up. And I was just having fun and being bored as a kid or whatever. And those people, when they ran out of punishments, they said, "You've been in a film and you make everybody laugh. I think you're going to run our first talent show." And it was at that talent show that I got my first comedy job. Now, having said that, yeah, I was 16 and a half and I got my first comedy job. That was opening up for people
Wow.
that were before your time. My very first paid show was opening up for Paul Rodriguez and Sinbad at a convention center
I've heard
at
of
16
Sinbad.
years old. They were
Wow,
very
that's
good, very
incredible.
at I was at a little, it was, I was being punished running the first talent show in a 150 seat cafetorium at a country high school that had 118 people in the graduating class. And I had to find three judges for the talent show. And one of them was the guy that ran the community theater. And I thought, oh, maybe he'll give me a job someday acting in a show. I heard they make $15 when they do a show. That might be great. And so turns out he said he put me into a comedy job right away. And I said no. And this is why I tell you this story is I said no because at the time I thought humor and comedy were the same thing. I hadn't matured beyond that yet. Turns out comedy is a commodity. And the jokes I had written for that particular event were examples of comedy, and they weren't that great. I had three main things that I had written. Two of them bombed, one of them did okay. The one that did okay was I'd rewritten the words to a Paul McCartney song Yesterday and made it about leprosy. Leprosy, all my parts are falling off of me. Now my
That's
nose
good.
is mouth should be all because of leprosy. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be. So I didn't even write that. He
That's
wrote
good.
that.
That's clever. I like that. At
Yeah, that
16?
one. At 16, I felt like, hey, one joke worked. Good to know I'm not a good joke teller. I make people laugh so much, yet good to know I'm not a good joke teller. That's because I was good at humor. I had defense mechanisms, possibly because of some things in my life, like my father passing when I was a little bitty kid and what that's and everything. But the humor is largely a health condition. I know this now, and I've written about it and spoken about it very much. Humor, it turns out, is largely a health condition. If you go far enough back in history, they'll talk about humor almost endocrine or
Yeah, the
hormones or something
humors.
like that. Yeah, the humors. Thank you. Humours, like the good humor man sold ice cream, or the humors that Shakespeare talked about keeping in balance in our body. So if
Right.
somebody was a total creep in the town square and hit somebody for no good reason, they might assume that they had an accumulation of bad humors in their arm, or if they yelled at them, maybe it's in their head. So they would cut them open to bleed those humors out so the
Humors.
humors could be back in balance and you could have good humor again, which I describe as if you're a big enough creep, people were willing to bleed you out with the understanding that if you survived it, you probably weren't going to be that big of a creep again. And
There
they're
might
like,
be some
hey,
wisdom in that.
that's right. Proof, evidence. Look, it's
Yeah.
medical evidence so that they're not punching anybody anymore.
Yeah,
So,
they
humor is a
learned.
health condition. Humor is a positive receptiveness to upbeat things that has health, and it has health effects. People with humor in their life regularly, the all the medical journals, the American Cancer Society, right down the line, they list the benefits of humor. Folks that have a reasonable amount of humor in their life, which is marked by shared laughter with other people multiple times a day. People with that in their life are incredibly less likely to get ill, incredibly less likely to die from illness. incredibly less likely to have heart disease and other stress oriented diseases. So, humor is the understanding of, let's recognize that word real quick. You're really good with words, Melissa.
Thank
Humor
you.
is like humanity, humility, humane. This is
Mm-hmm.
what humor is. Comedy is more like community, communication, commodity, right? These things are
Right.
more like comedy. And so I definitely sold my share of comedy in my life, yet I'm a professional that has a deep understanding and relationship with humor. This is one reason why I became an improv comedian primarily, because I would get up in front of an audience and start to tell jokes, and things would go well with me meeting the audience. And I would look out at them and I'd think, you're all interesting people. Each of you has like a universe around you of what you do and everything. There's so much here to be humorous about. I don't know if it's polite to tell you a bunch of jokes I wrote in a car between hotel rooms on tour or something like that. I don't, when you hear comedians tell all these jokes about airplanes and cars and hotels and whatnot, because that's what they're doing. And so I found it more interesting. I'm very curious, and I found it more interesting to celebrate these people and to use humor. And so that's a long answer for you. Yet that's why humor helped me so much. Is I'm about the things that we have in common. And I created a definition for humor that
Okay.
works for this explanation. Humor is a positive and upbeat receptiveness to funny things that happen while we are doing something else, while we're doing a good job with something. So if we're doing a good job being with each other, we're doing a good job doing business, we're doing a good job building a house. Who knows, right? People who have a healthy modicum of humor can laugh while doing that and staying focused at the same time. It's a thing that binds us together and is very uniquely human. And so, humor is an upbeat, positive receptiveness to funny or intriguing things that come up while we are doing a good job. And the last line of that is humor has to be allowed.
Mm.
Allowed. So very often people want to serious that humor down because we're not here to be funny.
Right.
Okay, we're here to
It's work. You
we're here.
shouldn't be making jokes.
Yeah, and it's kind of what you think all of a sudden being humorous is going to make or break the work that you're contributing right here, and you find more humor in more confident people because they allow it. And when we end up talking about positive psychology, one of the things they discovered, positive psychology as a field of study didn't wasn't even founded until 1998. So I'd already been doing my work on humor for decades by then, and it looks like a practicum for them in retrospect. Yet they go by a process called PERMA is one of the main things they talk about, and P of PERMA is positive emotion. And that's
Okay.
one thing we tell people is it's not like there's not a lot of positive emotion available. How good are you at recognizing it, nurturing it, or even allowing it to happen when it comes up? Right. So humor has a lot to do with humility, allowing, being humble enough to share a laugh with somebody. And when folks share a humor laugh like you and I have, Melissa, in a way, they're okay with each other for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Okay. In a way that can't be taken away. And that's a trick I would pull off in workshops and whatnot with teams and with the VA hospitals and whatnot, is they'd say, yeah, people aren't getting along and there's arguments and conflict in the workplace. And I'd put them together in games and structures where they end up laughing with each other. And there's really no way for them to go back to work and say, Bob's a jerk, when I just laughed because Bob and I were acting like a chicken or whatever made us laugh together. There's a thing that makes you okay with each other and raises that note and trust factor really high. These are all things that happen with humor. Comedy is also good. And who doesn't love a good joke or a funny book or a funny movie? They're just great, right? Yet humor is the stuff humans are made of. Humor is the stuff that makes us very unique. It enables the writing of comedy, yet humor its own thing. And so my ability
Mm.
to make myself laugh and make other people laugh, jokes or no jokes, right? I can make people laugh. I can make people make each other laugh, right? This ended up being incredibly important to me when I was diagnosed, even more so
Okay.
than it had been all my life. It probably prepared me for that in a great many ways. some of our icons. Gilda Radner comes to mind. Gilda Radner passed of cancer, and Gilda Radner was an extreme version of this humor belief. And I'm fortunate that I was asked by Gilda's clubs to do some charitable things. So all
Wow.
these things, I'm not sure there were. You mentioned God earlier, and I'm very humble about things I will say that I know about God and that I don't know about God, because that's God and I'm just me, right?
Yeah.
Yet one could say I was greatly prepared with interesting humor tools. I was greatly prepared for that battle. And so I share that with as many people as I can.
Wow. That is so fantastic. I had a really profound thought in there and then I lost it because I was just in
Not so
overwhelm of
much.
the goodness. So I guess it wasn't that profound. We're coming up on time for today. We're about to pick this up again for part two. That's just wonderful. I know you have a book about incorporating humor and play into, I guess I know you used it for work training, but for life. Where can people find you? Let's hit that real quick. And then before we wrap up for today, and then we'll go
Right
to
behind
part
my
two.
head, right there, you can see me throwing some things around with some colleagues. That's called
Okay.
Plays Well with Others. And that
Okay.
was my
Plays well with
first
others.
book. That was my first book, and it can still be found. We pulled it off the shelves a year or two ago because we were ready for a second edition.
Hmm.
And the second edition is going to be targeted at certain professions, because in the process of doing my 7,000 events, I learned so much helping so many different industries, and I'm going to give them something specific. Plays Well with Others, second edition will come out later in 26, and Plays Well with Realtors, which is a focused version of that, will come out here in about 60 days. And anybody interested in me can go to lesmcgehee.com and get a clue, or Google me. I'm not hidden. You can Google me. And
Your
it's Les,
website.
one S.
Yeah. Less. And then will you give them the spelling of your last name? Because I got that incorrect at first.
Yeah, it's an interesting last name. McGehee, McGehee. So Les McGehee. And Melissa,
Oh.
when I had the good fortune to be working in Hollywood, one of the annoying things that used to happen was I was very fortunate. I got to meet all the studio executives and work with Ron Howard and the people that Imagine Entertainment, and they're all very good at their work, right? Yet occasionally I would meet somebody, and I can remember a couple of really soft handshakes where the first thing the executive said was, McGee, he, I get it. And it used to frustrate me to no end that they thought I'd made up a name for show business and that the best I could come up
Oh.
with was McGehee.
They actually thought that?
Yeah, it's a McGehee, comedy name. I get it. I get it. Like,
Ah, I get it.
really?
You got it.
Nobody can spell it. Really? You think that's where I'm starting? That's just great. I don't know how you think I can write TV shows and movies if you think the best show business name I can come up with is McGehee. I don't know what. But yes, it is true. I enjoy meeting like-minded people. I have some broadcasts and whatnot that they can be invited to. This is my labor of love in this world, Melissa, and I need to help as many people with humor as I can.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're on the same mission, different tools, but same mission. Thank you.
Yes.
And we're going to be back in 2 weeks with part two with Les McGehee. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. It helps us get the word out. So until then, keep bouncing back. If these stories of strength and comeback hit home, you'll want to hear what's next. Click the video on screen to keep learning from our incredible guests on how to bounce back and thrive.